let's talk about direwolves because I feel like
No. Okay, no, go ahead.
no, we're gonna talk about direwolves because I feel like I'm owed a direwolf.
Do you think that that's like everyone at some point when you're born, a direwolf is born for you? Just
Yeah, only if
universally?
your last name is Stark.
Okay, so my name is Ben Kuchera. We're here yet again, and we are going to talk about last night's episode of Game of Thrones. We're on season 7, episode 2. I'm here with Chelsea, and I'm going to throw it straight to you.
That's
Chelsea,
right.
what do you think? What did you think of the episode? Give us like your 5-second reaction.
Yeah. By the way, my full name Chelsea Stark. Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
news
Yeah.
editor at Polygon. Hi. It's okay. I thought the episode was really good. I mean, like I think last week's was stronger, but I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff moving forward. We got to see like kind of characters starting to unite, and then we got this really crazy climax at the end of the episode. So like, I for it was a good episode of Game of Thrones. You definitely I was worried about who was going to die, and think things were delivered upon. Yeah.
I think I continue to have this conceptual problem with Game of Thrones is that when Tyrion gives a speech, he might as well just be speaking to us. Like when he addresses the room, it's just like drop everything, we're going to get some exposition. Let us the show explain to you exactly what's going on in the stakes under which we are operating. And that was kind of the first scene, right? It was like Tyrion is going to explain what's going on in case you missed the first 6 seasons of the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does a good job setting up the stakes for Dany and also like the plan of attack for them going into Westeros. I think actually we can even go back further and talk about the stakes for like the tension between Dany and Viserys. And I'm
Bears.
sorry, Varys. I almost said the wrong name, but like I think Dany has become really obsessed with like loyalty. She's been through a lot. She's seen a lot of people betray her, and I think her questions to Varys are totally fair. Like, where do you stand on this whole thing? Like, are you gonna back me up? And I wonder how much setup that is for the future.
Well, I mean, I don't. She's so young, and we're getting to the point where she is taking control. She's in Westeros. Big moves are going to start to be made. We saw the literal board with all the little pieces and the few lines as she pointed out. But you know, she's seen a few betrayals. She's seen like I think she's finally starting to understand what the risks are when you're playing at this level. People are going to die basically no matter what you do. On a long enough timeline, someone is going to try to kill you. These are things that I don't think Cersei thinks about on a top level because she's always scheming, right? She's lived this life forever. Dany has not. And I think that's what the speech is about. She's like in a position where she's getting out ahead of the problem instead of waiting and reacting to it, which I think is what we've seen in the past 6 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Dany at least has some ideas of what ruling is like because you know, she's been doing a little bit of it and failing at it too, and like we see that. But I also really think this brings up an interesting point of like all these people are really thirsty for power, but none of them has any idea what to do when they've reached that goal. It's like, I want the Iron Throne. Okay, what are you going to do with it? What's the point? What is Cersei going to do now that she's achieved her ultimate goal besides like try to hold on to it? It's just really interesting to see that.
Well, I think for most people it's a goal unto itself, right? You are brought up in this society where you have a family name and honor and power is everything. So that is literally the goal. That is like the meta thing to which you strive in doing everything. So I don't even think it's a matter of like, what are you going to do once you have it? I just think that's how these characters have almost been brainwashed their entire lives to think. Like the fight for power is kind of an end in and of itself, because like other than pure survival in Westeros, like what is there, right?
Yeah. Speaking of
So
betrayals, I think that we could
yeah,
actually, this is a good segue into Melisandre being there. You know, like we have this person who is like already brought false people up to believe that they were the prince that was promised before, and now she's showing up at Dany's doorstep. Is that a good thing?
Well, I think it's interesting because uh, one of the jokes I made on Twitter is that this episode almost felt like a trailer for a new Avengers movie because it's like every single character has to have at least a scene. It's like, oh, you love Alana, you love Melisandre, everyone's here. Again, look at all of the powerful people gathering for big things to happen.
Well, yeah, but
Um,
you said that was fan service last week, Ben. But I would say that at this point, it's just them gathering the
this
pieces.
Yes, this point at this point it's serving the plot because we are seeing very powerful people falling behind Danny, or at least for the time being using Danny for their own ends, and I think that's what we're seeing here. We know she brought Jon Snow back from the dead. She's now, in Dragonstone. They're trying to get Jon Snow there. Even Tyrion is like, "This Jon Snow is a stand-up guy. You should talk to him," and she's like, I will. She admits, if he admits that, I'm the rightful ruler because he's king of the north and everything. So it is an interesting connection between Danny and Jon Snow. Everyone realizes it's interesting to almost hear Jon Snow and Tyrion say nice things about each other, completely unaware that the other person is doing it. If not nice things, then at least like begrudgingly respectful things.
I don't think either of them has a reason to dislike each other. They kind of like that that line that was written on the Raven scroll was like, all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. Like that has bound them together in this kind of like we are
Yeah.
never going to be the favorite people of our house. And look what that happened is that we are now the ones leading our houses because the other people are like turning them to shit or are dead.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They do have that. They do have that in common. I'm curious when we're talking about Jon Snow. This is a smaller detail before we get to the bigger stuff, but I thought it was such an interesting scene. So Littlefinger's in the crypt. He's hanging out. He's hanging out with Jon. And he's like, "Listen, I was super into your mom. Now I'm super into your sister. What's
Gross.
up?" Right. And Jon Snow, in a way that is he's in this holy place, he loses his shit, right? He throws Littlefinger up against the wall, he's got him by the throat, and then he storms off and leaves. Um so what do you think that was about? Like give me your read on the scene because I have a one that I want to hear
I mean,
from you first.
I think that Sansa was totally honest about what the shit she experienced, and like John is being protective of her, even though maybe John should be aware that Sansa is more able to play the game at this point than he is. Uh, like John is almost echoing Ned Stark, at this point. It is like very similar in the ways of like I only respond this way in this angry way instead of like being a little more political. What is your take, Ben?
So I thought the second there's like the scene where the camera like pans up and there's Sansa and it pans over and there's Littlefinger and then it like spins around and there's John leaving. Littlefinger gained information from that scene. That's the important thing. He gained information. He said this thing, even if it's true, and I think he kind of gained the measure of Jon Snow as a character. He was like, okay, this is like an incredibly sensitive button with this guy. I can make him lose control by bringing this up. I don't think he was bothered by it. He's not bothered by threats of violence. It's Tuesday that people threaten to kill this guy.
Yeah, he's been choked a lot on this show. I was like, this is the same for him.
So I think that's how I read his kind of that's how I read his manner as Jon Snow is leaving. He was like, okay, so I learned this. Like I know that this is a very sensitive thing for Jon Snow. I'm in this position where I'm back alone with Sansa. Sansa's in power. I like power. He's got a path now. He knows how to do things. He has a little bit more information and data in which to use to maneuver. So I think for him, he looks back at that exchange and goes, okay, I won. I got something I wanted, information. I know the room in which I have to kind of operate in, and that's all he needs. So I think he's actually in a really good place right
Yeah.
now at how everything shook out.
Yeah. I think
And
we're seeing this really interesting arc too with Littlefinger, where at the beginning of the show we were like, he's kind of shady, but he's on the right side of shady, and now we're like, hey buddy. Like She's 16. Back off.
Well, yeah, and there is a weird thing where it's like, okay, he couldn't have her mother, now he wants her, and I do think that aspect of it gives the audience more of a reason to like want bad things to happen to him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But
And go for it.
I don't think that because Game of Thrones never, I think gray characters that exist in the gray realm of Game of Thrones, those are the kinds of characters that survive in this world. And so I don't think we're going to get any kind of satisfaction from Littlefinger's death. If anything, he's going to exist as a continual antagonist.
Yeah, I mean, and it's I think that's a really interesting point because we're seeing slightly the same thing with Clegane, even though he didn't show up in this episode, in that like, if you don't believe in anything, if you don't have anything to fight for, you have less of a reason to get into fights. Like that's basically it. Littlefinger is an agent of chaos. However things play out, he's rarely put in a situation where he needs to put a flag down and go, "This is what I believe, and this is what I will die for." So he's less likely to die.
Yeah,
Right?
the only thing he'll die for is himself. I mean, like, that's it.
Well, at the end of the day, isn't that the only way any of us die?
Yeah, I guess that's true. Let's
Move on from existential dread and move on
Yeah.
to
There's not like a happier thing we can move up. We could talk about Arya. I think we should. We should spend time talking about her and her like direwolf situation, part 1. That's a pretty good place to jump into. I mean, actually, going back to seeing her with Hot Pie, you can see like kind of. I felt like we were starting to see the like Arya furiously eating and demanding ale as like Arya's trying to get over the shit she's seeing, a little bit. Maybe I'm the wrong take.
And that's how she sees people act. That's like someone who is under their own agency and wandering around the world and doing what they want. That's how they act. That's what's been modeled for her. So she's like, this is how adults act in inns, and when they can kill people and they want things.
Maybe. I think she also just was like, I don't know. I wonder if the weight of all these deaths is weighing on her at all. Like, it may not be. She may be a ruthless killer.
I mean, well, or the other thing is it's that we forget in terms of age, like it's hard. It's hard, I think, to even know what killing someone is like at that age. It's possible it's all kind of sliding off her back and it's just now catching up to her. Like maybe she's not suffering the damage everyone else is just because she's younger and doesn't understand the weight of what's going on. But yeah, and then you have her acting at least how she considers to be very adult, and then you have Hot Pie show up, and it's this great reminder that like she was a kid like not very long ago, and her character has changed substantially since then. And and Hot Pie is a survivor. I love that detail.
Yeah, I love that. And he's always going to be alive because he's just in the ovens, like cooking and stuff. And then you see this moment with Nymeria, her direwolf, which, like she maybe doesn't expect Nymeria to come with her because she recognized they're both kind of lone creatures, but like she's looking for that connection. She misses her.
Right. And I don't think this scene was actually handled as well as it could have been, because when I was looking at people's reactions, they took that line to mean that Arya wasn't actually sure if that was Nymeria or not. And it was. Like, in the little snippet they play on the HBO app after the episode, the producers say first thing, like, yes, that was Nymeria. That was a callback to the first season when Ned Stark was like, you could have dresses and live a life of peace. And Arya says, that's not me. That's what the callback was. We were supposed to know unequivocally this was the direwolf. This is why she said this. It was supposed to be an emotional scene. I think a lot of people who are watching this and who read the recap probably got it. I think there's at least a fair number of people who didn't.
Yeah.
And I think it could have been driven home a little bit better. Yeah. But Nymeria also didn't die. So like we have this, like, I would bet anything that's one cute little pupper who's gonna pop up.
Oh yeah.
Like when things are really dark later on, that's a hand the show still has to play.
Yeah. I mean, the books also hinted that Arya had at least like the hint of warg abilities like Bran does because has dreams where she is Nymeria.
Mhm.
But I imagine that's probably going to be too weird for the show to explore. And it's more just going to be like your wolf comes in and bites some guy's throat at the right time.
Okay, so
Yeah.
where does Jorah go now? We are going on the assumption that they wouldn't have spent that time with him
That
unless
whole
he's going to
the
survive.
grossest scene, uh, and with the best trick cutaway too.
Oh god, that smash cut was the worst. I
It
was
was.
actively angry for like 3 seconds afterwards because
I
it was
I
just
didn't
so
hate it.
bad.
I thought it was funny. I mean, it was just a little ridiculous, but at the same time, I was like, all right, it's gross. I mean, like, I wonder what Jorah's part has to play. I hope it's not just following Dany around and being gross. Like, I hope he has a better part to play, and maybe it's related to Jon and Dany's meeting. Maybe it's related to the Wall. But he's clearly like Sam's here and investing, and maybe that's his Sam doing this just gets him kicked out of the Citadel. I don't know, but like clearly this is going to have some bigger part to play.
And it was this compared to the direwolf scene, which I thought was not done as well as it could have been. I loved every moment of Sam and Jorah's interactions because just the lead up to what was going to happen was way more terrifying than the actual moment.
Oh God, it was. I mean, it was pretty intense, and like you think about the fact that he had to tear all that skin off as a
Drink
lot.
this. What is it? It's rum. This is gonna just drink it all. This is gonna
Just
be
drink it all.
the
Oh
worst
God,
thing.
you
What's this
know,
for? It's to bite down because you're not allowed to scream, and it's gonna be so terrible. You're gonna want to be screaming the entire time.
we
What are you
have
gonna do?
skin grafts now at this point. Like medically, this is a little scary because okay, but yeah, I wonder what like Jorah's future is going to be. That's like kind of a cool setup. Everything they're doing with Sam Tarly is really interesting. Also, really interesting that his dad came in, and like I don't think they're gonna be. I don't think the two of them are gonna be related at all in the future. But like to see Randall Tarly, like you can. I think that's more. That scene was meant to be a lead up of like Jamie and Cersei, almost like in a current like mirror of our political climate, using fear of the other to like get these people in line.
Yeah, and and they don't. I mean, the bottom line is they don't have friends, right?
No, they have
And
no
like
friends.
that scene kind of drove home the point that they need to do whatever they can, and their moves are limited right now to get friends because it will start to become just a game of numbers. Who has the more people to throw at the other people? And on that note, let's get to the final scene. Let's
Yes.
get to the battle. When you don't see anything on screen that you want to see, it's because the show is saving up budget for battles like these, like
Yeah.
these.
Though I feel like this battle was for a long time, hard to tell what was going on other than like murder. Uh, and then you can finally see the stakes. It was kind of sad because this was the part of the show where I'm like, uh-oh, who's gonna die? And this is like, yeah, I didn't think it was gonna end as well as it did for Yara. Not that it seems to have ended well, but like I did think she was just gonna straight up die. Uh
Yeah, and it's like you have these boats and you have like B or C level characters and they're fighting and it looks cool. I through the entire scene, I almost just couldn't bring myself to care about any of it.
Here's why this matters, Ben. Because the whole plan that Tyrion laid out at the beginning of the episode is dead. Because they've just lost the Greyjoy army and the Dorne army. Like they're bringing the
So
they're bringing the Dornish people back to King's Landing. They're going to torture the Sand Snakes. They're probably going to torture Yara. So that means Greyjoy, House Greyjoy, and probably House Martell will have to fall in line a little bit. And that leaves like this big chunk of stuff where it's like, okay, the two armies that were going of Westeros that were going to siege King's Landing and cut off their supplies are now gone, leading back to Lady Olenna's giving that original advice to Dany saying, hey, you're not a sheep, you're a dragon, you're gonna have to show your strength. I think that means that Dany is going to have to show her strength.
And so I get all of those like meta tactical aspects of it, but I almost think the show backed itself into a corner in that
Yeah.
it is often that things that big do happen off screen, and someone again moves a piece on a board and goes, "Oh well, we just lost 10,000 people because so and so took this whole area." We sweep a lot of that, we handwave a lot of that in the show often in past seasons, but there were so many again, like B-level characters who would have been there. I think the show almost felt like duty bound to show what that actually looked like. And so and the flip side of that is, since we don't have a good top-down view of like what's going on, I don't think it really did hit home that this armada is lost, that the plan is dead. And it's like, okay, so we have
I mean,
we
yeah, maybe the boats were all on fire though.
yeah. I mean, it's yeah. Once you spend a moment to think about it, it's there. Iran is now very scary, and we've seen him in action, which I think contextually we've gotten in the past already. And so, so my question is that the gift? Do we know the gift now? Is the idea that he either kills or brings the Sand Snakes to Cersei and goes, "Hey, they killed your daughter. You do, you
I
do
think
what you do."
I think that's the gift. Yeah, I think I think that's the gift. I think we're gonna see some fucked up shit from. Sorry for cursing so much, but Cersei's not like, clearly she blew up the Sept of Baelor, and like was like kind of just like, and also my son died, but I don't care. She's just like full tilt.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's nothing like diplomatically that anyone cares about the Sand Snakes at this point. They do not ultimately matter in the bigger game. It's not like she's going to murder or torture these people, and the rest of the kingdom is going to go, well, now she's powerful. She avenged this death we knew nothing about what amounts to like the Tiffany Trump of the Lannister clan. This character who is off doing something and had a name, we guess, and then nothing ever came of it. So yeah, that does seem like 100% personal. And if you're trying to get someone to marry you, I guess that is the plan. On top of killing the armada on which someone's entire military plan rests, which is not a bad way to endear yourself.
Yeah, I want to bring up something interesting that I read online. Someone pointed out, like, sometimes the show does a lot of tricky things with time, and like, people can travel fast for narrative's sake. But the fact that Euron was able to build all like 1,000 boats in a month is literally impossible. And that's what he did. Like the fact that they just like kind of fixed a whole thing that should not have been able to happen.
How
And
many how many boats did they show? Like how many? What's the least number of boats that he could
he
have
said
had?
he
Ships
said
that he could have had in that battle.
I don't know, but he said in a previous season, build me 1,000 ships and I'll give you the world. So even still, a ship
But
takes
yeah,
2 years to build, apparently.
my my only point is, in this particular battle, if he only had at his command like 5 or 6 ships, and that's kind of all it took, and it was just tactics and sheer brutality, then yeah, that's.
Yeah.
But the show, I think if you sat down, if you if you had the time to sit down with a map that actually showed relative distance and like numbers of people, and tried to kind of act out the show on the timeline in which it's supposed to operate, the logic is going to fall apart
Oh yeah, no, you
real
have to
quickly.
suspend your disbelief, but I just wanted to bring that up because it's like,
Yeah.
I like, sometimes you're just like, what? Okay. And sometimes you're like, well, ravens get there really fast. That's I was remarking that last night when I was watching. I was like, did you sit that bird? Like, how fast is that bird going? But
So
it's a fantasy show. I get it. I get it.
okay. So one last topic before we kill this off, and there's a lot of argument on this online. How much, if at all, do we hate Theon?
No, not at all. Poor Theon. I feel bad for Theon, and I think that you could see it in his eyes. Like he started seeing people being dismembered. Uh, as someone pointed out on the Game of Thrones subreddit, they were cutting out the tongues of the people on Yara's ship because that's what Euron's ship is crewed by, is people without tongues. which is real dark. So they were cutting out the tongues and he just murdering people, and he went back to Reek like quickly, and he just that was a horrible experience for him. You know, he's still not a whole person. I just feel bad for him.
Yeah, I don't. A lot of people did not have a lot of sympathy, and they saw it as a cowardly move, and like on the continuum of things he could have done. I guess it is, and this show clearly, with the sound editing and how they moved the camera, was hinting that this was PTSD kicking in way more than it was a calculated plan.
No, that you just float in the water. I mean, you just see. I don't know. Alfie Allen did such a good job, like overall, just portraying this like someone seizing up at a moment.
That is, just for people who didn't know, because I'm continually amazed by this fact. That's Lily Allen's little brother.
Yeah, she made that whole song about him, and the music
About
video is great.
about how he does nothing but sit around the house all day smoking weed. And apparently he grew up, he got his act together, and now he's our beautiful Theon Greyjoy. So well done him.
Doing a lot of movie work. Good for him.
So, and even taking the PTSD thing out of it, what could, when people are like, I'm angry because he jumped, he escaped and he saved his own life, what could he have done?
Nothing.
What is the path of action they think he could have taken?
If he charged Euron, he would have cut Yara's throat. Like, I don't think that there was a, like, if anything, he could have laid down his sword and also been taken prisoner.
Yeah, there's not like a sequence of events in which anything other than one or both of the characters we care about in that scene getting killed. Had he stayed and fought,
yeah,
it might have been, as like the show shows it, a quote unquote good death, but it's not like he had the chance to save the day and didn't take it.
Yeah,
and he, again, just like Nymeria, he's still in play. He is a character who exists out there. We don't know how long it's going to be until we hear from him again, but it's another piece on the board that will ultimately be moved again in some manner.
Yeah, I feel bad for him.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank you so much again for sharing this wonderful conversation about Game of Thrones with us. Chelsea, would you like to say anything as we say goodbye to our wonderful viewers?
No, thank you guys for watching. We got 5 more weeks, so we'll if you have any feedback for us, let us know. If there's anything you want us to talk about more, talk about less, we're here for that, and we're just here to enjoy talking about Game of Thrones together. Thanks, Ben.